Joining us now from The Athletic, also does a lot of sideline work for Fox Sports College Football, is our friend here on the week before the draft and the day after. Many of the Big Five, Power Five conference commissioners chatted with the Vice President of the United States about potentially having a season or not. Bruce Feldman back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Bruce?
I am doing well, Rich. It's been interesting times, obviously, for all of us.
No doubt. And I trust, I know we were discussing off air, but I definitely want to bring it on air. Everybody fine in your family, correct?
Yes, thankfully, yes.
Good. Knocking on wood right there. So what can you tell us about what the college Big Power Five commissioners think about the season right now? It seems to be pretty dire at the moment, Bruce.
Yeah, so there was a call yesterday with Vice President Mike Pence and really all the conference commissioners, not just the Power Five, but everybody in FBS football. And I think one of the things that they wanted to make clear, because look, if you don't, work in the space of college sports, you don't probably realize, even if you don't, college football is different from college basketball. The NCAA runs the college basketball tournament. The NCAA does not run the college football playoff. And so one of the things that, they had pointed out, just to be clear, is that until the universities feel like it's safe for their students to come back on campus and participate in activities, they can't have games. And that's just a reality that several of the conference commissioners have, pointed out. Just to be clear on that front. Now, who knows how things are going to be different, a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now. But keep in mind that it's going to take, 6 to 8 weeks maybe for teams, if they get an all clear, to get ready for actual games for their own safety reasons beyond the COVID issue of just health and conditioning. But also, you got to remember, we're talking about 100-man rosters, another 50 people in support staff. So it's like, what is the testing going to be like? What is some of the other challenges that are going to go into this? So who knows if a season's going to be able to start on time? I know I've talked to some people who are inside college sports who have, considered the prospects of the season being delayed, possibly even till 2021, the start of the 2021 calendar, but at least would get the college football season, if it had to come to that, to take place within the academic calendar. And what that really means is college football drives the boat financially for college athletics. I mean, if they don't have it, the money that comes from it, it'd be devastating towards universities and not just their athletic programs, but a lot of other things that college football helps fund.
Yeah, we had your colleague at Stadium, Brett McMurphy, on a couple weeks ago when he was reporting about a poll that he conducted with a lot of athletic directors across the country, and how many of them thought that there was going to be no season. And he mentioned the same thing you just did, and let's just play that out. Why would anybody like Trevor Lawrence or anybody that would be atop an NFL draft go ahead and play a college season that is out of season in a way, and would not be would be going on? I'd imagine when the NFL would be having a combine. If everybody's back well enough to play football, then the NFL would be conducting its off season, if you will, unless the NFL season gets pushed too. It just strikes me that would not be workable, just to have college football. I mean, obviously you can play it, but maybe the stars of the game would be sitting that one out, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, the example you used is Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence was a unique case in that regard. Now, I'm not saying what he would decide to do if his team is playing. Would he sit out and say, all right, I got to get ready for the combine, or I can't risk injuries, or who knows? I think we're in such uncharted waters here. The idea of people saying, wait a minute, I mean, look, where you went to college, it's a really cold place. It's a really cold place in lots of parts of the Big Ten country. It's much colder in February than it is in November. But you know what? If I think it came to that, people would have to try to find a way to make it work. And I think, getting back to the Trevor Lawrence part, I don't think there's that many football players, remember, if they don't have this season, I don't know how many guys you're working off of where you're basically going off their 2019 film and then a lot of guesswork. I mean, there's already so much guesswork in the process anyway.
Right.
I think that would put the NFL, just from that standpoint, I think that would put the NFL in a really challenging position to try to evaluate people. So I'd be curious what happens where you'd have, like, this sets up some interesting scenarios, because then all of a sudden you're talking about having a season that, let's say hypothetically, the season didn't start till late January. The season's probably not ending till May then. So you're going to have a season end. If it was that, we'd have a season end in May. And then what does that mean for a 2021 season? Is it piggybacking off that? So I don't think anybody knows. I really don't. I mean, because there's nothing. We just don't know enough about what's going on. But there are a lot of people who work in college athletics who are kicking the tires on what-if scenarios now, because right now I think there is so much up in the air, and they know, again, the money is so monumental for them. I talked to athletic directors at the biggest schools who talk about the money involved, and it's a cold, hard reality of this. So I don't know what they would do. I mean, would there be some kids who'd say, you know what, I can't play if we're going to play starting in the winter of this year, and it's going to drag into the spring because I'm looking at my NFL future and what that could mean?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, Bruce. I mean, like, for sure. Just take a look again, and then obviously I know a lot of players might feel pressure in that regard. And again, I preface this by saying this is all we're speculating, and there are far more important things going on in the world. Understand, but while we're just in this arena, just to play it all out, absolutely. I mean, players need to start thinking about all that, and as much as they'd like to play one last time with their teammates, however they want, playing from September to December or January one year and then going into the NFL is one thing. You're going to start seeing the entire season being placed aside by prospects in the same way that Christian McCaffrey placed aside the Sun Bowl back in the day, and now he just hit it. He's the best paid running back ever. So check that box that he made the right decision back in that day, as opposed to potentially taking the Jalen Smith or, just name anybody else taking that route. I think you're definitely going to have that conversation.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. I mean, I don't think that's unrealistic. I just don't know how many players fit into that category. I don't think it's going to be widespread where you'd have every player. I could be totally wrong on this. I mean, but I don't think you'd have every guy who's a potential combine invite, which potential is a lot more than the ones that end up in Indy, certainly, who would say, you know what, I can't do this, because I just think that, it would, I don't know. I just don't think that many would go. It's one thing to sit out a game. It's another thing to sit out a season.
Right. Bruce Feldman of The Athletic, Fox Sports, here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's talk here and now. What's going on with Tua? I mean, what are you hearing maybe from your end of things of sending Tua to the next level? What you're hearing about his workouts, what you're hearing about, I mean, Trent Dilfer says that he and Ken Whisenhunt have remade his base. Nick Saban saying on Details on ESPN Plus that he just tried to do too much. That's how he got hurt. He's not going to be an injury case at the next level. What are you hearing about his stock right now, a week before the draft?
I mean, like you, I've talked to Trent, and I think I've talked to some other people in the NFL, around the NFL, and certainly college people. I don't think that Tua is a brittle guy. I do think that certain guys have some injury quirks where it can happen in the course of it's a very physical game and everything. I don't know how many quarterbacks would have taken the hit he did from Mississippi State and been able to, keep playing through it. I just think that, sometimes it's you spin the wheel and that's what happens. I mean, here's what I would say about Tua. In terms of his arm talent, in terms of his anticipation and how he sees the field, as well as his kind of demeanor and how people respond to him, because I've talked to a lot of people inside the Alabama program over the last few years, I would roll if your medical people have signed off on. To me, that's the biggest question. But if they have, I would definitely roll the dice on Tua, because the talent level is so impressive that he has, from in terms of his anticipation, how he sees it, how he triggers, and how the ball comes out. I mean, if I was going to be wrong, I would be wrong. I would be wrong on that front. At least you'd be missing on a guy with a very, very high ceiling if somehow the injuries come back to bite him. But I don't think you can look at it if your medical people sign off on him. Then I think that's something that teams have got to decide. Because to me, I would be more comfortable with him than a couple other quarterbacks a little later who are way more inconsistent in what they do on the field, and that would give me a lot more pause than, well, he might get hurt. Well, those guys might get hurt too.
So the pause on someone like Love is the fact that he had a drop-off last year at Utah State. I just did not see any Utah State football. I fully admit that. What happened last year, and what do you think might be playing into that 1 week before we're expecting to hear his name?
Well, Matt Wells was his guy. That was the coach at Utah State who found him here in like the San Bernardino area, and nobody else was interested in him. He was a skinny guy who threw it well, and Wells did a great job with him. And then Wells got the Texas Tech job, and that staff left, and the new staff wasn't able to, I don't know, they tried to replicate what they did offensively without maybe knowing the recipe, because they didn't have holdovers from that same group. And I think, this is stuff I talked to from coaches who were, interviewed him at the Combine. I mean, he is talented, but there is a consistency issue that would give me some pause. He struggled at times, and I think there is that story about like, hey, quarterbacks, it's so critical about what position, what situation they go into. I think Jordan Love is that times 5. I mean, I think he is the one who could be all over the map in terms of if he doesn't go into like the ideal situation. I think it's going to be a big challenge for him. Now, if he does go into a really good situation and they nurture him and they give him time to develop, I think he could be a really, really good starting NFL quarterback. But there's there's more factors of uncertainty with Jordan Love than there is with any other really talented quarterback in this draft.
Bruce Feldman, the Athletic College Football Insider of Fox Sports, here on the Rich Eisen Show. So in terms of talented guys, who do you think's the most talented kid in this draft? What do you got for me?
You know what? If I'm talking smarts and I'm talking competitiveness,
sure,
as talent, I'm taking Joe Burrow. I was around that LSU team a lot for the last month of the season, and he's as smart as any quarterback has come into the league in a long time from college football. He's athletic enough where he can make some plays, and the presence he has with his team, there's a chip on his shoulder. I have, to me, there's no such thing as a can't miss guy. I thought that as a quarterback, I thought Andrew Luck was the closest thing I've seen as a college football quarterback coming out, but I think he is the safest pick because of how smart he is, how he sees the field, and also there is a moxie to him. I remember, hearing the staff at LSU talk about when Joe gets ticked off, he's sticking it in people's face. That edge to him, I think, will serve him well when teammates get to know him. I mean, I'll go with the guy who's smart and who's accurate, and he's really accurate, and he has really good feet and presence in the pocket. I mean, the stuff he would do in the red zone, on third downs, on fourth downs, it just was uncanny for a college quarterback. And so to me, he's by far the safest pick of the quarterback.
Yeah, I know. And I do know that we're in the world of nitpicking and finding flags and all that sort of stuff. And I totally believe that Burrow really doesn't have any on that front. I mean, I watched him make every throw, man. If he needed to high point it for his receiver, he would do it. If he needed to lead his receiver, he would do it. If he had to drop it in the bucket, he would do it. If he had to look somebody off, he would do it. The best part about him is that he never, ever gave up on a play to the point where he'd put his own health at risk, and he would be always eyes downfield. It was amazing. I mean, just the remarkable, beyond his years ability that we were seeing was quite something, but it was just 1 year. You know what I'm saying? Like, where the hell did this come from? That's the question with him.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think they didn't quite have the same system in place or the talent in place at LSU when he transitioned there. I do know this from talking to, there's a project I've been working on this off season related to LSU, and talking to guys who were his teammates when he first got there. They talked about from the day he got there, him kicking everybody's butt in the conditioning runs in Louisiana, which, by the way, is scorching hot at that time of year. And from that point, how he basically won over a team where he was the guy. It wasn't like he was there during spring football. He came in late. The only other example I can think of a guy who kind of took over a program, late at that stage was Russell Wilson when he left North Carolina State to go to Wisconsin. And I don't think he had the egos and the kind of stuff that Joe Burrow had to navigate through at LSU at that point. So just as a quick aside on it, so I'm at the Combine, and Joe Brady, that was the pass game coordinator who's now obviously the OC with the Panthers. And we were talking about this, and I ran into him, and Ken Dorsey was around, obviously he's an NFL coach now also, but he was Miami's quarterback on that great, arguably the best team of all time in college football, the 2001, that Ed Reed team. And they were joking, I was joking with Brady about who's the best team of all time, and he was like wanted to say something to Ken, and I was like, no offense to Ken, but the biggest difference in that team, because I don't think this LSU team quite had the level of talent and stars that Miami team, but what they did have was, as good as Ken Dorsey was, I mean, nobody had a season like Joe Burrow just did. I mean, that was the gap, was between Ken Dorsey, really, really good college quarterback. Joe Burrow had as great a season as anybody's ever had playing the position in college football.
Before I let you go, Bruce, your current piece in The Athletic, talking about you've been obviously covering it's the athletic part of The Athletic, I guess, the freaky athletes. I give you the floor on this, and who you think is the freakiest athlete available in the draft this year.
Well, the freakiest athlete from that story was Isaac Sopolaga, and it was a crazy story which started out on basically in a bar with a couple of NFL guys, and they started talking about who had the best arm of anybody they'd ever seen, and it was this 330-pound defensive tackle who just, retired, I guess, 7 or 8 years ago. And then the stories of the legend of him being able to throw at 75, 80, 85, almost 100 yards. And then I remember talking, I finally get him on the phone, and he's talking about what he had, that he still trains. And he was like, well, I didn't take lifting seriously until about 2008. I was like, wait a minute, at the Combine, you did 42 reps on the bench. And then I was like, if you weren't taking it seriously then, but you were, 4 years later, what did you do? And he said, I asked him what the most he ever did 225 was. Rich, he said he did 74 reps. That is insane. That's like that would be the equivalent of somebody running like a 3.840 in Indy.
Hold on a second. So there's 225 pounds on the bar, including the bar. And he said he lifted it 74 times? Is that what he said?
74 times. He said he would have his Friday morning workouts with the Niners. He would get up. He would start out by running 3 miles, and then him. And so after I do all this reporting to try to confirm that he could throw at 80, 85, I get off the phone and I'm like, oh, great. Now I got to chase the 74 reps of 225. I mean, nobody has ever seen anybody done anywhere near that. Schwarzenegger in his book, I guess, claimed he did 225 60 times in his prime.
Mm-hmm.
So I call Will Tukuafu, who was played for the Niners for a while and was his lifting partner, and he swears it's true.
Wow. So
crazy news.
I guess nobody putting up 74 reps in this year's draft, although Tristan Wirfs is one of our favorites that we spoke to. I mean, talk about freaky athlete. He told a story
he was
about
my number one freak this past year.
Right. Correct. Right.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is a really good offensive line draft, especially offensive tackles. And this guy was Iowa cranks out powerhouses, and this guy was this champion wrestler, a super strong dude who did stuff like nobody else had seen before as at the University of Iowa. I mean, to me, he was when we did our freaks list going into last summer, he was clearly the number one guy. But just you're talking about the explosive power. I mean, the guy is 320 pounds, vertical jump at 35 plus inches, or more than that.
He was telling us the story that the in high school that the girls' tennis team was they had their tennis court on the other side of a fence where he was practicing his, what was it, the discus or the shot?
Yeah.
It was the discus. And he would throw it so far that it would land in the tennis court, and he had to change his workouts to make sure that the girls weren't on the tennis court doing their practices when he was throwing the discus. I mean, that's because he's in a small town. He might have thrown it really from one end of this town to the other. And so the question is where does he go and who goes first? And so you'd name Wirfs that guy. And then there's Chase Young. I've never seen anybody this year. I know Michigan changed their entire offensive game plan to erase him essentially, and they got erased anyway. Penn State would let him loose, just wouldn't even block him, thinking that they'd use his speed against him, and he was too damn fast anyway. That kid's something else, man. That kid is something else.
Just on him, and this isn't even a freakish thing, we did their game as a Friday night game at Northwestern. We knew they were going to crush Northwestern, but to see him, and obviously they've had great D linemen, the Bosa's come out of there in the last few years, but the thing that was different about him than those guys was the team fed off his energy from the moment they got on the field in warm-ups to the time when they're up 40 on Northwestern on the sideline. He's pretty much out of the game. Like, he was that, you could see how they fed off his energy. And I'm fascinated to see what he's going to do, because right when he got the 2-game suspension, I really thought he had a chance. I'm not saying he was going to overtake Burrow, because Burrow kept on playing better, but he was the most dominant defensive player we'd seen in college football, maybe going back to Sue. I mean, because Sue was just wrecked people at Nebraska that year. But what Chase Young did was just remarkable, and obviously they had a lot of talent around him. So some of the things you're talking about, it's pick your poison, and that's a lot of poison you're going to be gobbing down. So, I mean, I think he'll go to Pro Bowls for as long as he's in the NFL.
Bruce, thanks for the call, man. Everybody should check out Bruce's work on The Athletic, and then we'll chat maybe next week when we've got a draft to talk about.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I'm glad we got it.
Right back at you, man. Thanks for the call. That's Bruce Feldman here on the Rich Eisen Show. Check him out. I follow him on Twitter. You should check him out as well. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.